Hi, I'm Paige, and I'm a student at App State.
Hi, I'm Connor. I'm also a student at App State.
I'm Morgan Mills, and I'm also a student at App State.
My name is Cameron Silvers.
Hi, I'm Farah.
My name is Katie Cowell.
I'm Rachel Lowry.
There we go.
So where were you living at the time of Hurricane Helene?
College Place.
Okay. What was the initial response of your landlord or leasing agent? Did they offer other housing? Did they refund you for partial rent and deposits?
We just got an email saying that reach out if anything occurred to our apartment, but we were fine. And then I'd say like a day after, we got an email saying to pay our rent because it was due, and that was basically all we got. Which me and Morgan lost our cars. What did you lose?
I lost my car, which was a hand-me-down from. It's been in my family for a while, and it had barely any mileage on it. It was very sad, and I watched it drown. So I lost my car. It's okay.
I lost my car, and I had left a lot of things in there because I was like, there's no way the water's gonna get up to our level. I lost a lot of CDs and just like stuff I paid for inside that was like probably $500 worth, and I couldn't get money back for that. They told us it didn't count. So I think that was the worst part was, you know, you think like everything in your car you'll get it back, and then it was just no, because I didn't realize how high the water got inside. So it got up to the seats, so I didn't realize a lot of my things were covered.
What?
So I went volunteering with Samaritan's Purse to this place on Old 421 where the water had gone up like 35 feet easily. You could see that on the water line. And we were just cleaning out mud, and we were just shoveling, and like one of the guys I made friends with was like, dude, I need a supervisor now. And because we had found a dog in the mud. And this was a week and a half, 2 weeks after the hurricane had hit. And a homeowner walks over and he's like, that's my dog. And he assumed it had been lost in the flood, but he didn't actually see the body. And this was an old pot-belly, gray beard, silver beard, redneck kind of guy. And he's like, do you need help burying him? He was like, no, I'll take care of myself. And he just kind of like held him and just like sobbed for like 10 minutes, which was like weird. That was definitely like the hardest single scene I could think of. But he grabbed one of our shovels and he just dug, and he kept digging, and he got it buried. And yeah, just hard to see just how much people really lost, because that wasn't just like an isolated incident. That was probably pets all over the place. That was people's homes that they had spent years trying to get. There was like on that same property actually, there was a gazebo that had fallen over. I'm sure that was a lovely gazebo. That was my neighbor's 2 miles upstream that had floated perfectly down and settled down into his yard. And so it was just wild seeing how extensive it really was.
Can you share a moment that stood out to you during the aftermath, whether it was a kind act from someone or a personal realization?
I'd say like what we did, we handed out food at one time. Ayana had made food, and we had handed it out to some of the trailer park. We went to a fire station, and then we also went to the police station to hand it out. It felt good trying to help out, because we were just kind of stuck at home. We couldn't do much.
Yeah.
You know, my car wasn't working, so I had to rely on other people to drive around. So I did the best I could, and that was mostly all we could do, or I'd say it was just helping like below clear out their apartment and stuff like that. That's mostly like what we did to help.
Yeah.
We did more volunteering than us.
Yeah, we went. So the Watauga High School had like a handout shelter where they had food, water, clothes, baby stuff, all sorts of stuff like that. And the part that really, I think, hit me the hardest was the fact that we weren't struggling for donations at all. We literally had to turn away 3 separate tractor trailers full of water because we couldn't get any more. Now, part of that was because they were trying to go to an Asheville or a Morganton, and they couldn't get there kind of deal. But seeing how much you hear about, like in like other like natural disasters, and the amount of supplies they get in tons or whatever, it doesn't really faze you. It's just a number. You start seeing hundreds of pallets of water, thousands of pounds of food. We literally had baby diapers stacked up to the ceiling in the gymnasium twice.
I know someone from Alabama came.
We had someone from Louisiana came. They drove up. They were survivors of of Katrina, and they were coming. They dedicated their life to hurricane relief at that point. And so just seeing the overwhelming support, even though it's not usually a reason that you would see it for, just the fact that I think it could be any disaster, any part of the country, you would still see that kind of support from people all over.
I have one that's now positive.
Oh.
I'm sorry. it sticks with me so much, and it just grinds my gears.
Oh no.
When we were downstairs helping clear out their apartment, like gutting everything, a lot of pictures had gotten out from our apartment complex because people were taking pictures and sending them places. Like I know a picture of our parking lot got on like WRAL, which is crazy because we're.
Oh yeah, we were on ABC.
We were like everywhere. And I guess some people in Boone had service, or they might not have even been from Boone, but when we were downstairs helping clear out and like gut that apartment, there were cars, and I don't know if you guys saw this, but I saw it and it made me very, very upset. People were driving through that did not live here.
Oh yeah, they was recording.
With their phones out, recording us. Like, it was so bizarre, it felt like we were in a zoo.
Helping.
Like we couldn't even
Not helping.
Right.
Like walking by us with their phones out, recording and then leaving.
Like the helicopters going over as
the
well.
military,
That felt
yeah.
So like you could see it was military, and then there'd be like news helicopters,
Well, that was
and that's all you'd hear for like weeks, and it was just them recording us, and it felt so weird, like it felt wrong.
Yeah, the way they had to put out a full, like, they had to send out a thing after a couple days after the hurricane, because there was supposed to be a football game that weekend, and they were telling parents, like, hey, don't come here, because some parents were coming up, grabbing their kid that was on campus that got, like, no damage, and then they were, like, touring.
Yeah.
Like, I got a message from one of my friends, like, hey, we're about to go tour, like, look around at the damage. I'm like, no, you're not. You're going to get in the way. They sent out, like, a couple different messages of, like, yeah, construction crews are having their, like, efforts halted because people want to come look at it. And I'm like, that's just a lack of empathy at that point. Like, you clearly see what's going on, and you're like, yeah, no, let's go, like, be a tourist. Like, why not?
There's a difference between touring versus seeing what happened, and we went just to look around, like, places we knew, because we didn't know how bad, we only knew how bad over here.
Yeah, we stayed in downtown Boone.
Yeah, so we didn't know how bad it was. But I feel like if you're going out just to take videos and pictures of it, to say, like, this is my town and nothing happened to you, it's pretty hurtful knowing that people just didn't care. They just wanted to get, like, the clout off of it. And just recording, like, people having to clear out their apartments and, like, not even bothering to ask if they're okay or ask if they need help. You're just going to drive by and record it.
Yeah.
That was pretty upsetting.
Some of the cars at least. Like, some of the cars at least, like, offer food.
I was gonna say, I also have a positive one. There was a guy in a Jeep that came, and it was, like, souped up. He had a lot of water, he had food and stuff, and he was driving by. I know he came through our parking lot, and we were out gutting the apartment downstairs, and he, maybe actually not. We might not have done that yet, or we might have already done it. Because I remember yelling at him from the balcony. He was like, are y'all good?
Starting it, I think. That was early in the morning.
Yeah. Like, are y'all good? You like, y'all need food or anything? Like, that's the appropriate way to drive
people
by.
do that, and that was really nice.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Yeah, that's part of, like, not even, like, the official responses, but the amount of people, like, we went out and made some dinner, tried to find people to feed, and we were not alone in that. That was awesome to see.
What message would you like to share with others who may not fully understand the impact of hurricanes and the long-term struggles of recovery?
I would just say, it's pretty hard seeing, like, my mom's from Las Vegas, and she said no one knew about what happened. And I think that's the worst part, is that just because there's a lot of talks about it being in Appalachia that no one cared because it's more poor. Like, let's say this happened in, like, pretty big cities in Florida, it would get a lot more attention than it did here. And it did. Like, Asheville was ignored a lot. We were ignored. Tennessee was really ignored. And I would just say, I wish people cared more about the smaller populations instead of just focusing on, they cared more about what property was destroyed than, like, the people that died.
Yeah.
I only saw a post about, like, Biltmore being hurt. That's all I saw. I didn't see anything about people dying or people having to leave their homes. It was just about big tourist attractions that were hurt. And that's, like, people think this was nothing. They think it was a tiny hurricane, we barely got anything. So I wish people just could do their research and see how bad it was before they would make any comments on it and say it was just a little thing you went through. I just wish we got more coverage for what happened, basically.
3 things in particular. One, listen to your officials. That was one of our biggest mistakes. We did not, because, like, and there was a tropical storm by the time it got to us, but even a hurricane technically. But it just, you got just pay attention more, get supplies, just be ready for whatever. 2, if you're not from the area, stay out. Yeah. That was one of the bigger things of, like, having to keep people out of the way. And then 3, I think this goes for all natural disasters, of just because it drops out of the news coverage doesn't mean the place is fixed. Just because there's a bigger story to be covered doesn't mean that there isn't still debris laying on the ground somewhere. Granted, people have to move on with their lives at some point. Like, I get that people after like a month or two, okay, I gotta go to work, I gotta get food, like, I have bills to pay. That's okay. But if you have an opportunity to donate to a good fund, Red Cross, just any fund you can to help people who were struck by it, would be very, very, very helpful.
If you could go back and give yourself advice before the storm hit, what would it be?
Tell everyone to move their cars.
I would move my car. I would move my car.
I would have moved because I told my roommate to move her car, and I didn't move mine because we're all like, "There's no way it'll get up here. There's no way."
Well,
like,
if we were shocked seeing
so
the water hit the parking lot over there. We're like, okay, that's new, and then it just kept going and kept going.
By the time I was gonna move my car is when the transformers were just all going off, and I didn't want to, get electrocuted, and then I also would smell gas at that point from the water.
Yeah, you could see the gas rainbow on top of the floodwater a decent amount of time.
That's when I decided that it wasn't, my mom said it's not worth it at that point. She just told me to stay inside. I just had to watch my car go underwater, but I don't know, I definitely wish I told myself not to underestimate what happened, because I really did. I just said, it's just a tropical storm, nothing will happen. So I wish I could go yell at myself and say, move your car, don't be stupid, like, forget your ego, and just take it as like it's a real hurricane. That's what I should have viewed it as.
Yeah. We also probably could have done a little better. Well, that part of that wasn't our fault with the relief effort of like volunteering and stuff. Part of that, it got congested at some points. Like I tried to go volunteer at Samaritan's Purse one day and they wouldn't let me because there was too many people. And that was great, seeing a lot of people come out, except other organizations didn't have any people because Samaritan's Purse was the one putting stuff online and handing flyers out. So just maybe giving myself the knowledge of like, be aware just because there's one really big organization at work, don't be ignoring the smaller ones. Just go around, ask help, try to reach out wherever you can kind of deal.
Move your car.
Move your car.
Move my car. I definitely would have moved my car. I often think back to the night before where I think App had emailed us that was like, we'll let you know if class is going to be it was some weird email that was like kind of vague and didn't really give a like definitive answer about classes. And I'd called my mom before anything had happened, before any semblance of anything had happened, and I was like, should I come home? And she was like, I think you should come home. And I was like, it's already raining. What if I get stuck? So maybe I would have gone home, but also part of me is glad I stayed here because I met, my neighbors. I met a lot of people in our complex, and I got to see, all of Boone come together. So that was lovely. Wish I didn't live in my car. And I think that's all for me.
Just want to comment how many new cars we have in the parking lot now.
Yeah, add that to the list.
It was really funny seeing all the rental cars for a while.
So it was like Florida, New Jersey. Yeah, it was most
Nevada.
random.
We'd all like, if one person was at home, we'd all see like whose car was getting taken first from the tow company. Like, your car's next. And we'd all like go out.
Can you record it for me?
Yeah, it was like the only way, like only fun we could really have was just like making the most out of it. So I guess I would tell myself that. I wish we should have been more positive. I mean, we were pretty positive, but I don't know. I would tell myself just to like let it go. It's just a car. It's okay.
When the Liberty quarterback, the Liberty was the game we're supposed to play on Saturday, and they called out and was like, yeah, what a bunch of pussies canceling on us.
They said we were ducking them.
Yeah, how about you like use your eyeballs?
And
maybe?
People were all like, and it was actually really sweet though. All like other players were backing us up from even like
the Liberty players were like, hey,
teams.
Shut the hell up. Yeah,
I remember I like posted a TikTok and I got a comment from like Old Dominion and a couple like other colleges just saying like praying for you, and I think that was really sweet. It was just like even rivals,
even Georgia Southern, Georgia Southern. I'm like, I don't like you that much, but I appreciate the sentiment.
They let it go because we all just realized it was bad. I mean, I would have done the same thing for other schools. So
definitely.
I think that was really sweet. We're seeing everyone did get on Liberty about that, and they haven't let them forget it. I still see comments to this day about it, so that's good.
It's like, remember you were an asshole it was only a couple months ago. It was the crazy part to think about. There was the memory we had. We were in your apartment, I think. You were at home at this point though, and Zach Bryan's 28 came on, where it talks about how it's been a hell of a week, and it happened to be exactly 1 week from when the hurricane made landfall. And so we just sat in like silence and like almost like dark. It was like,
and it was just how lucky are we, and we were just
damn.
Like,
it was just hard. Yeah.
It's the little things like after songs I'll listen to where I just have to like sit there. It doesn't really hit that we've been through it. Like I don't think it's ever gonna hit, but we'll have to see next hurricane season.
Okay, so tell us, where were you living at the time of hurricane?
I was at Bavarian Village.
What was your initial response of your landlord or leasing agent?
Right after the hurricane happened and the water subsided, we got an email saying we were to be evicted, so we had to leave immediately.
Okay. Did they offer any other housing, any other options, anything like that?
We weren't offered housing. I think App State, they were offering housing for through hotels and stuff, but I obviously wasn't able to just move right in. All my stuff was destroyed, so.
So with everything being destroyed and being evicted, did they offer you a partial refund or any deposit back?
No, that was not offered.
Okay. So what happened to your belongings when they were destroyed? Were they just gone?
Yeah, so I was in a townhome, so I had 2 floors. So the first floor, within 45 minutes, everything was destroyed, all my couches, tables, TVs, stuff like that. So I was there when it happened, so me and my roommate, we went upstairs. Thank God our rooms weren't touched by anything, but everything downstairs was completely destroyed. We lost $5,000 worth of stuff.
So after being evicted and everything like that, were you able to retrieve any items?
From upstairs, yes, but within 2 days we had Samaritan's Purse come through and they got rid of all our belongings downstairs.
Were you compensated for any of the belongings you lost?
No, we weren't.
What personal items or memories did you lose that were the hardest to let go of?
I think just the memories of decorating everything downstairs, being an App State student, you have the little decorations you have, pillows and stuff like that. That was kind of the hardest thing to let go and not be replaced.
Did you have somewhere to go initially after leaving your home, or were you stuck?
I was stuck, and thank God my dad was able to get up there and save me, but if I didn't have my dad to come up there, I would have been stranded.
Can you run us through basically waking up, realizing what was happening? Run us through that day.
I remember waking up and it was raining and I was like, oh, hurricane season, and then within, I think it was 11 o'clock, it was starting to get pretty bad. The water was starting to pull up in our parking lot, and I remember calling my dad and being like, should I move my car? I don't know what's gonna happen. And he's like, you should just leave it. If water starts to get in your house, there's nothing you can do. It's just gonna come in. So we weren't really told to leave. We were kind of just told to stay put in that situation. So I left my car there, and within the hour, everything was just waist deep in water in my apartment, and we lost everything. And then, yeah.
So that's when you realized that the hurricane was getting bad, is when you saw your car?
Yeah. My car flooded too.
What was the immediate impact of the storm on your home, your community, and your family?
The immediate impact, it was awful to see because all the belongings were placed right outside Bavarian, and so it was really surreal to see everybody's belongings just thrown out. You really see how devastating it is for everybody right after something like that.
What were the emotional repercussions of what you went through?
It was really hard emotionally just because we lost everything in our apartment, obviously, where we were living and all the memories and stuff. It was really emotional at one point because when the hurricane was coming through, someone with their dog was carrying her dog to try to get somewhere safe. So that was really emotional. It was just distressing overall.
Did you feel like the hurricane had an effect on your own sense of security and safety?
Security for just where I'm living, how I'm going to get to school, and where I'm going to park, stuff like that. Just security in living situations, I guess.
How did losing your home impact your ability to show up for school and continue your life?
It impacted me because I had to stay over a month at home without an apartment, trying to get everything situated, and then I was still expected to do schoolwork within that time frame. So it was just a lot of school stress with that versus also trying to find a new place to sign a lease and do all that as well.
Are there any moments from this experience that still stick with you, whether they're good or whether they're bad?
I think the overall experience it's going to stick with me forever. I've never been through a hurricane. So just to see my car flooding, my roommate's car, everyone kind of came together and our cars were moving through the water. It was just very surreal in the aftermath of seeing all the videos of social media. I think everybody else affected by this too. It will always stick with me.
So you would say that there are definitely some emotional scars that
Yes.
came with
Yes.
it, and it was a traumatic event to live.
Very.
How did your neighbors and community come together in the aftermath of the hurricane?
Like I said, Superintenden's Purse, they came through and they helped remove all our items, even stuff that we wanted to save as well. I had to get a U-Haul to get all my stuff from upstairs, but they were very helpful with doing that and coming together as a community to help us get everything out in time when we had to be evicted, obviously. And I would say just Bavarian Village kind of came together as a group too. We all were just like, it is what it is. We all lost everything, but at the end of the day, we're all still here. We're all alive, so that's the main thing.
So how has your perspective on your community, how has it changed since the storm? Do you have more faith in the community, or do you have a lack of it?
I feel like I do, because nothing like that had ever happened before, so no one was really expecting to, come together in that moment, but we did. And we did as much as we could. Everybody brought waters, food, stuff like that. So yeah, I think I have more faith if something were to happen like that again.
If you could go back, you meet yourself in the past and give yourself advice right before the storm hits, what would that advice be?
Move my car. Move my car, and yeah, just try to get more stuff upstairs so it won't be ruined.
Do you have any thoughts on how the local or federal authorities handled the disaster response?
Locally, I think we got more warnings just to kind of stay inside and everything, which I think that was very important. Obviously, stay inside if you're not in a flood zone area, but obviously if you're in a flood area like I was, it wasn't the best option to do. But yeah, I think they handled it accordingly as they thought was appropriate.
How do you think the media handled this tragedy? Do you think they captured the full reality of what happened?
I think they did. Like I said, there was a lot of other social media videos I saw of people's cars floating away, so that was very surreal. It captured kind of the gravity of the situation. And just the aftermath, I think a lot of people kind of caught as well.
What does hope look like for you in this process, the recovery?
I think just to come together as a community and to just focus on rebuilding everything. There's still stuff that we're trying to rebuild in Boone as a community. There's houses that were destroyed and everything, so I think just having hope and coming together to rebuild is the main thing.
So looking back at everything that happened, what would you say has been the greatest lesson learned from your experience with Hurricane Helene?
I would just say to be prepared for anything, prepare for the unexpected.
So nothing happened to your belongings or anything?
Not at the apartments, but my car was parked at the State Farm lot.
Okay, so your car was destroyed in the process?
Yes. Yeah.
Were you able to go get it, retrieve anything out of it, or was it all gone?
It was all gone. When I seen the images of it, I had my friend who lived over there take pictures of the car while it was still flooded, and it was up past the windows, so everything in the car was completely flooded.
What personal items did you lose that were the hardest to let go of?
I would say the car itself. I had worked probably 4 years now just to get the car paid off. I've spent probably $17,000 out of my own money on the car. I've had no help paying on the car, so it was all in my name. That was probably the hardest loss, was the car itself.
So run me through that process of finding out that your car's gone. Where do you go from there?
So I wasn't sure of the damages until I arrived to the car and I had opened it and everything was wet. I tried to put the keys in and start it. It wouldn't start at all. So I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if I was going to get any funding through the school. Didn't know if I was going to get any funding through the state. I live 50 minutes away, so I use the car to go back and forth to home. So I didn't really know what to think other than just wait it out and see what happens.
Can you describe the day that the hurricane made landfall? What were you doing when you first heard it was coming your way?
When I first heard it was coming this way, I didn't really think that much about it. I live only 15 minutes away, and all my life we've always been told tornadoes and hurricanes were going to have a big impact because we live near the mountains. And then so I thought when they said a hurricane was coming, I thought it was going to be like every other time where it was just a bunch of rain, a bunch of wind. I didn't realize how bad it was until that morning I woke up and I looked outside all the streets were flooded. And then there's this little ditch on the side of our apartment, and it was like a river was coming out of that ditch. We didn't have any data, either data or Wi-Fi, so we couldn't reach out to see how bad it truly was. And then when the data came back on and all the videos started coming up, that's when we realized it wasn't the same as before.
How has losing your car changed your perspective on life and security?
Probably that anything can happen. I didn't expect my car to ever be totaled by a hurricane, especially up in the mountains. I would say always have a backup plan, always be on your feet, regardless of the situation, whether you think something can happen to you or not.
Are there any moments from this experience that still stick with you today?
I was trying to search through all the videos from the State Farm lot and see if I could find my car out of it, and then finally finding my car being submerged in the water. I probably won't ever forget that.
How has the emotional toll of the hurricane affected you personally, and what has it been like to see your community struggle with recovery?
I was able to go out west, further west to like Burnsville, and help the victims out there, and just seeing the destructions of their homes. Their lives were pretty much flipped upside down. There was parts over more towards western North Carolina where you couldn't even get to. The firefighters were talking about it was more of a recovery of bodies than it was trying to save people. And that kind of like, it hit me that this is a disaster we've never seen before in the mountains. I was lucky enough not to lose any family, but I would say the emotional toll was hearing how others people's lives have changed so dramatically.
Can you share a moment that stood out to you during the aftermath, whether that was helping with recovery or whether that was your own experience?
When I was helping over there in Burnsville at a local firefighter station, there was a group of people from South Carolina that brought up their ATVs and their trucks. They legit had to take alternative routes, back roads and stuff, just to get to us, but they came there out of their own will to help everybody in the community. It was a beautiful thing to see not only local communities get together, but communities like in South Carolina, Tennessee, just all over coming to help us. That's the thing that probably stood out the most to me.
Were there any particular organizations or groups that played a significant role in your recovery and helped you heal?
App State helped a good bit, but really it was, the support from my friends and family. I started a GoFundMe after I realized that I wasn't going to get any insurance from the car, and started the GoFundMe. And a lot of friends and even people that I've barely talked to, strangers and family, supported me and gave a helping hand and donated, and I was able to afford a cheaper car, and it's reliable now.
How has your perspective of your community and its resilience changed since the storm?
Coming up to Appalachian, to me personally, I thought the rich people up here could be snobby, stuck up, and then after the hurricane, it really changed, going to different churches and just seeing how much they're donating and how much they're willing to help. And like I said, with the people who came from South Carolina, they did not have to do that. They did not have to travel 4-5 hours to help a community in need. Just the selflessness has really changed my perspective about the community.
What messages would you like to share with others who may not fully understand the impact of this hurricane and the long-term struggles of recovery?
This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. It never happened before, and I'm not going to say that because, we said that before, probably may never happen again. And Helene was a monster, and she came and she wrecked, and she destroyed everything that some people had. and it's changed the outlook on many people in Western North Carolina. There's really nothing I can compare it to, because just you go out and you look at like the atrocities from the hurricane itself, there's nothing to compare it to.
If you could go back in time and give yourself advice before the storm hits, what would that advice be?
To move my car. And I would just tell people to take the hurricane more seriously. I feel like we did get like the message that the hurricane was going to be very serious, but we kind of just shrugged it off and thought it was going to be like other hurricanes. So I would just go back and try and warn people as much as I can.
How do you feel about the way local and federal authorities handled the disaster response?
I feel like the local authorities did a decent job as far as them not knowing how bad the hurricane would have been, and then trying to build something from the disaster of the hurricane. I feel like they did a decent job. Federally, I feel like FEMA helped out as much as they can. I feel like there still could have been more help.
How do you feel about the way this hurricane was handled in the media? Do you think they captured the full reality of what happened?
I don't believe news did a good job at all capturing what happened during the storm. I have family down in Florida, and they knew there was a hurricane and that it affected North Carolina, but they didn't know to what extent until I started showing them videos on TikTok and stuff. I feel like the social media aspect and then the actual news part of it, they differed greatly. Social media captured what many didn't get to see, and the news didn't really show that.
Looking back, what would you say has been the greatest lesson learned from your experience with Hurricane Helene?
Just being selfless. When people need something, especially in times of disaster like Helene, even if you have nothing, try your best to help. It's worth helping.
Where were you living at the time of Hurricane Helene?
We were in Bavarian Village Apartments complex. It's like behind Walmart. And yeah.
What was the initial response of your landlord or leasing agent?
Yeah, so it's a little confusing because the storm happened on Friday and we didn't really hear anything from them that day. I actually was out of town over near Winston-Salem, and Katie was there staying with one of our friends, and I actually received a call on Saturday from a friend who lived in a nearby complex who had been walking over the property, and they had actually talked to one of our landlords, and they had gotten information saying that we were going to be kicked out, that our lease was going to be terminated, that the property was going to be condemned, but we hadn't heard that from them first, so we were kind of hearing it from the first time from a friend. So I actually drove over to Greensboro, because that's where Katie evacuated to with our mutual friend, and picked her up, and then we drove back to Boone and started packing up stuff without ever hearing anything officially from our landlord.
Yeah, they ended up telling us that we had to have everything gone by, I think, Monday.
Yeah.
But they told us that on like Sunday night.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And there was already people like Samaritan's Purse there moving stuff out without them ever officially communicating anything to the people living at the property.
Yeah.
Did they offer other housing?
No, they never really offered anything official. They offered us the option where we could either terminate our lease, so then we wouldn't be paying anything and we were in charge of finding housing on our own, or they said that we could keep our lease and not live there and now not technically pay rent for the time being, but they couldn't give us a date on when we could move back in. And we just decided to terminate our lease because we didn't want to get caught up in anything legal where we still had a lease but we weren't living there. But they did not offer.
yeah, they offered a like evacuations place, so they like shuttled people by bus from the apartment complex to I think like a nearby school or gym or something like that, but never provided any extra housing for the time.
Did they refund your deposits?
No, so the pay period for like the next month, like the due date for that payment was coming up I think within the week of the hurricane, and so basically when they had communicated everything, they were just kind of like, hey, don't pay your next deposit or don't pay your next rent basically for this month, and if you want to cancel your lease, like now is the time to do it. So they didn't really refund us, but they just told us to like not pay anything further.
What happened to your belongings? Were you able to retrieve them?
Yeah, so like Rachel said, we moved our stuff out before we even really knew we had to. They kind of sent out an email on that Sunday being like, hey, anything that's not moved out of your apartment by Monday, if your apartment is deemed condemned, it'll get destroyed and you can't go back in. And so our belongings, because we like randomly knew ahead of time, we were able to get out on time and take everything that we wanted. We left a lot of things that we wish we didn't have to just because of like convenience sake, and we didn't have anywhere else to put them. But yeah, we were able to get out a lot of the things we needed. A lot of homes that like people had to evacuate out of town and didn't have access back did lose a lot. Again, like Samaritan's Purse came and kind of cleared everything, and so if you didn't have your stuff out on time, it was kind of a lost cause. And so yeah, we were a little more fortunate. Also, we had a lot of those apartments are 2 floors, and so everything that was destroyed on the first floor was like destroyed, but a lot of our personal stuff was in that top floor.
So any belongings that you did leave behind or were destroyed, were they compensated?
No, nothing was compensated. Which our apartment wasn't pre-furnished, so everything was kind of on our own. But yeah, nothing was compensated from the hurricane. And there was a lot of confusion even as people were moving out because Samaritans first arrived on the scene, but our apartment complex hadn't really communicated what was happening. So, and in general, whenever you grab a large group of people together, it can be really difficult to communicate effectively. And so I know a lot of people were upset because people were going into their units, but they maybe didn't have the chance to go in first and kind of assess what needed to be kept or what needed to be taken out. And so there was some frustration, which we didn't fully experience, but we did have people like go into our apartment after we had been in there and like take some of our stuff out, but it was all stuff that we already had deemed that we didn't want.
Yeah, I'd say the only compensation, there ended up being stuff through the school. And so we were able to go and get like money back from the school. Obviously, like not much in comparison to like what was lost, but I know the school did some sort of like, they like gave money to people who lost things, but nothing by our apartments or like anything in full.
What personal items or memories did you lose that were the hardest to let go of?
As far as memories, I mean a lot. I think Katie and I both kind of talked about this, but we were very fortunate that we had people surrounding us to help us, but for us, it was more of a loss of our expectations for the year ahead. So kind of mourning what we lost in the months following to knowing that it's our senior year and we're about to graduate, but we don't really have a place now, an apartment together to kind of create and foster new memories, but also mourning, obviously, the memories that we had there.
Yeah, I would say Rachel and I loved, like, one of our favorite parts about our apartment was, like, having people over and, like, having it be a space where our friends could gather and, like, spend time together. And so I think losing that was hard because that was no longer something we could do.
How has losing your home changed your perspective on life and security?
Yeah, I think... Actually, Rachel and I had had a conversation like a week, maybe not even, before that of just being like, wow, we love our apartment. And I remember having like a specific conversation with like really close to that day of like, man, like this is just really sweet. Like we get to have a place where we like have our own spaces upstairs. We can have people over downstairs, and like it was just great, and we loved living together. And so I think as far as like security and a place of just like comfort, we like recognized how grateful we were, but also like you take it for granted a lot. Like it's just kind of known of like, oh, you're in college, you have an apartment, you live with your friends, it's like such a fun time. And so like when you don't have that, you kind of are like, oh yeah, this isn't promised. And like, yeah, it sucks when it's not how you want it to be. As far as safety too, I think like that was a big thing that shocked me kind of afterwards. I remember we are both like mentored by the same woman, and she had texted us that her house was open because she heard about our apartment. And I remember it's like 10 o'clock at night, and like she lost all contact with us because her like she doesn't have service, or didn't at the time where she lives. And so she like had said it once like in passing, and we were like didn't know what to do, so we just pulled up to her house at like 10:30. She has like toddlers, and she was like, they like come outside with a flashlight because their neighbor is like missing, and so they didn't know if it was him, and they were just kind of like so relieved to see that we were okay. And then I remember in their house was when I like realized the whole safety aspect of it, of like they had no like contact to anyone, so they were seeing the pictures we were showing them, the stories we were telling them for the first time. Our apartment complex specifically is for like families. There's a lot of like families with kids and elderly and stuff like that. And so I'm like, yeah, like these people don't have just like a place to go right now. And there are people like dying, and there are people like getting seriously injured. And I don't think that like registered to me until that moment. And so as far as like, yeah, safety goes, I think it was just a shock of like, man, not only like does this comfort aspect not, like it's not promised to us, but also just, yeah, like things can happen and just take away like safety in such a quick moment. And it was eye-opening in that way too.
How did losing your home impact your ability to show up for school and continue your life?
After the hurricane happened, Katie and I were couch hopping. We ended up staying with the lady who mentors and disciples us out in Vilas. But even then, like, we had to adjust to kind of this new circumstance because her house was like 25 minutes away. And it's a little different than how it was in our apartment. Like, we have 2 mattresses pushed together as like a mega bed is what we called it. But, and like, that's super fun. But, and Katie and I kept saying this, like, oh, our friends are so willing to help us, but like in 5 months when like most everyone is back to normal and like forgets this even happened, like we're still going to be dealing with the effects of this. And I don't know, so I think like feeling the weight of like, yeah, half of the people like were unaffected and are back to normal life, want normal life, but like that seems really hard for us to attain right now because our schedules, where we're sleeping at night, everything has changed, and that does really have an impact on your mental well-being, like your sleep, what you're doing each day. And I think especially last semester, I felt the weight of that because I felt exhausted every single day. And then, yeah, like expecting or being expected to show up to school. I was trying to get into grad school at the time. Like, I just remember being really tired, being like, I can't do it all with like the means that I have right now. And we even talked about this too with like our capacity. Almost like where our capacity was here before the hurricane, like our capacity was now here. Like my 100% looked different at the time, whereas it felt like everyone expected my 100% to look the same. I think it was just weird, like adjusting to a new routine, but then like being forced to adjust to it in such a short period too.
What message would you like to share with others who may not fully understand the impact of Hurricane Helene and the long-term struggles of recovery?
I think, again, we're a college town and a lot of people were unaffected, and that's like a beautiful thing. But for the people that were, this, like, I think it was easy. Like, even now, it's the first time I've talked about the hurricane in a long time. I think it's kind of like an over and done with thing. Like, oh yeah, it happened, like we got over it, and now we're moving on. And, you know, school is back in full swing and nothing seems different at all. And I think the reality is like, yeah, I'm living in a completely new place now. I don't have my own space anymore. Like, we don't live together anymore. Like, senior year looks totally different. And like, not even for us, but like, again, people lost family members, people lost like animals and pets and like homes. And I just think that, yeah, again, there needed to be an expectation of moving forward, and like a step in the right direction to do that. At the same time though, like there are and there will be long-term effects that impact people in the way that they live. And I think like, yeah, seeing if you come into Boone, North Carolina now and you never knew that there was a hurricane, you wouldn't know. But like a lot of people's lives in Boone were like changed for a much longer time than it has been. Yeah.
I think I realized one of the biggest things is that the news cycle moves on so quickly, because I remember when the storm hit and like for the few days following, obviously like a lot of people like who I'm even following on social media live in a similar area, if not in Boone, and they were posting about it, but like even within that, the people who lived in Boone and weren't as affected stopped posting or stopped talking about it. And I think just realizing like if you're not in like the heart of it and you're not experiencing it, like yes, the world cares and like they're gonna give attention to it if it's a big deal, like how Hurricane Helene was, but like it's gonna move on, like the world is gonna move on. And we like saw that too, like Boone so quickly moved on even though like they were so impacted. And so I think it just gave me a lot of sympathy too, looking into other situations, like even a few months ago, like the California wildfires. I have an uncle who lives out there and the fire stopped like a mile before his house. And like seeing people post about it, but then like stop talking about it. And so I think it gave me like a new outlook and sympathy towards people who are going through something. And I think when people look at natural disasters or they look at people going through something, they're so quick to be like, oh, we need this resource and this resource. And like, not really like dive into the situation to think about like what people really need. And I think I also gained a new perspective of looking into like, okay, well, this situation is going on. Let me like dive in to see what people really need. Because I feel like even with Hurricane Helene, people were just posting, being like, here's resources, whatever. But like after a time period, people didn't need those resources. Like they really needed this. But then like those resources weren't being met. And so I think just like being in the heart of a disaster and like being impacted, and then having other people, like, I know your family lives in New York, like they weren't here. Like I have family who lives elsewhere, or like friends who live elsewhere who like didn't understand, I think just gave me like new insight to like, if you really just aren't in a situation, like people don't care, which is like sad, like, but after a while they don't. And so again, it's like finding that resilience like in yourself and your community to like do what you need to do together, and like asking for help when you need it, but also like getting out there and like doing stuff with your own hands, like your own feet, and like if you're able-bodied, like doing something that someone else can't. And I think I learned a lot about like helping neighbors, and also like learning time when like you don't need to help, like you need to take care of yourself, and like finding that balance.
My name is Macy Cooper, and I was part of the editing team.
My name is Kelsey Butler, and I wrote the essay.
My name is Chloe Madam, and I wrote the essay.
My name is Addie Anthis, and I was part of the editing team.
My name is Emmy Pearson, and I conducted the interviews.
My name is Cameron Gowan, and I created the visual aids.
And my name's Sarah Martin, and I was also a part of the editing team.